All right, stuff I like.
It's stuff I like to see. Rocky Rebel, stuff I like.
Andrew Klavan likes
Stuff I like.
I had to play that again. It was by Anthony Leonardi and Norman Young. And last night, Kimberly Guilfoyle introduced me to Anthony Leonardi. Really nice guy, really sharp, and he was thrilled when we played it on the shows. Well, we played it again. That's why. Stuff I like. I want to talk, I may have talked about this film before, but I want to talk about it in a different context. I want to talk about The Searchers, which is a 1956 film. It's considered one of the great American classics, one of John Wayne's greatest roles. The truth about it is only half the movie is any good, but that half is one of the greatest movies ever made. It deals with John Wayne plays an Indian fighter whose niece is kidnapped by the Indians. And he goes off to hunt her down, and really he wants to hunt her down and kill her because he figures once she's been raped by the Indians, she's no good anymore, and she's going to become a squaw. And he just despises the Indians. And there's two stories. There's the home story. There's John Wayne and Jeffrey Hunter go out hunting for Natalie Wood, who's the little girl. And then there's the story at home, and the story at home is just mock comedy. It's not very funny. It's really kind of dated and all this. The stuff with John Wayne is one of the greatest movies of all time, and it's worth watching. It's worth sitting through the other part. It's not terrible. It's just worth sitting through that other part to see this great picture. Here's a little clip where they find some Indians. They're searching for these women who've been kidnapped, and they find some Indians. Here, let's just play this 1 minute clip.
I found Lucy back in the canyon. Wrapped her in my coat. Buried her with my own hands. Thought it best to keep it from you.
Oh. Did they... What was she...
What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture? Spell it out?
It's a very, very compelling story of a guy who just despises the Indians, has good reason to despise them, and is hunting down the niece that he loves because he loves her. He wants to kill her because he feels like she's lost. When you watch this film, what comes to my mind is the parable, the story, it's not a parable, of Jesus and the woman who's taken in adultery. I'm sure you all know the story. They bring her, the scribes and the Pharisees bring her to Jesus and say, should she be stoned? And he says, well, yeah, let he who is without sin throw the first stone. And everybody goes home, of course. And then he says, to the woman, he says, go and sin no more. And it's an amazing story. It's not in the earliest Gospels. It's not in the earliest copies that we have of the Gospels. And so there are people this very day, some on the right, who want it removed from it's in the Gospel of John. They want it removed from the Gospel of John. They say, well, it's not in the earliest editions, the earliest copies that we have, so therefore it's not real. And they actually want to take it out of the Gospels. There's a whole other school that finds very, very early references. It's not in the Gospels. They're very early references to the event itself. So it's in texts that very close to the event, people saying that this woman was brought before the Lord and that basically telling the story, even though it's not the John version. So it seems really clear to me that it was actually edited out, not that it was edited in. And the reason it was edited out, I think, is pretty obvious, that it's offensive to everybody. If you are a leftist and you hear that this woman has been brought to be stoned by adultery, you say, oh, this is so judgmental. There shouldn't be adultery. There shouldn't even be marriage. These are just cultural constructs, the construct of sin. What do we do? We're going to stone people. Look at this evil thing that's been stoned. If you're on the right, though, there's also this argument, well, if you let her off the hook for her adultery, then adultery will be without a price, and therefore marriage will fall apart. Marriage is one of the pillars of society, and therefore society will fall apart. That's how conservatives think. They do think that way. And Jesus says, it is a sin. Let he who is without sin throw the first stone. And I really do feel that idea that the moral universe is there, but it can only be understood through love and compassion. It can only be understood by including ourself in our condemnation and really not judging not lest we be judged, which is the one thing that Jesus said that would have gotten crucified would get him crucified this very day, not by the left, but by everybody. You know, when you say judge not lest you be judged, people go nuts. And when I point out that he really meant it, he meant that. He meant that you cannot judge a person's state before God. And when he said, you know, take the plank out of your own eye before you remove the mote out of another person's eye, he actually meant that. He meant that you should do that. And that's a lifelong occupation, taking the plank out of your own eye. And when you see the way that parable plays out in The Searchers with John Wayne, it is a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching story that really does speak about how the philosophy and outlook of Jesus Christ imbues the arts of the West. It is really worth watching. That's it. This Klavanless weekend begins, doesn't it? This is Thursday. Yeah, I'm kind of confused because I'm flying around, but this is the Klavanless weekend. I don't know what I can do. I can do no more for you. Hold your breath, hide, you know, keep away from the riots and all that stuff. And those of you who survive, gather with me again on Monday, and I will be back. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is The Andrew Klavan Show. The Andrew Klavan Show is produced by Robert Sterling. Executive producer, Jeremy Boring. Senior producer, Jonathan Hay. Our supervising producer is Mathis Glover. And our technical producer is Austin Stevens. Edited by Emily Jai. Audio is mixed by Mike Cormina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Alvera. The Andrew Klavan Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2018.